All right, 10 things about which we were wrong.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Oh, yeah, I don't care about the numbers.
Welcome to another D3 Datacast. Matt, in the words of NSYNC, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Oh yeah. How you doing?
I didn't know that was from NSYNC. They invented that phrase. That's good.
Yeah, pretty sure. Pretty
Okay,
sure.
cool. I'm doing great. Glad to be here. Merry
All
Christmas,
right.
everyone. Merry Christmas out there in YouTube land. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, so we had a more abbreviated week, Matt, and so that's allowing us to do this show a little bit early so we can get it packaged up and ready to be under the tree there on Christmas morning in our usual Monday time slot. But I think there are still some things worth talking about. Matt, is there someone that you think won the week for you this past week?
I got two. I'll give you my first one first, and then my second one second. That's the order I'm going to go. Who
I
won the
like
week
that
for
order.
me is Hampton Sydney. They got the big road win against John Carroll. I think that was the biggest game played this week. It was a convincing scoring margin. Hampton Sydney has now beaten Christopher Newport, Widener, Swarthmore, Randolph-Macon, and John Carroll. I think usually this time of year, it's really easy to default your number one team to someone who's still undefeated. Hampton Sydney does have that one loss to Guilford, but I think that they're still in the consideration to be number one, even above a team like who's in like Oswego State, Calvin, other teams that are right in that mix as well. Even though we have some undefeated teams, Hampton City with the one loss, probably the most impressive resume out there in terms of wins. So I think that they won the week. Also, my second choice winning the week, me and my family, Zach, because we got your family's Christmas card in the mail yesterday as we record this. So thank you for thinking of us this Christmas season, Zach. Really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I have a lot to do with it. So if it was up to me, you probably wouldn't have gotten a card in the mail, just not because, I'm a Grinch or I wasn't thinking of you. It's just, that's not really my department. So
Okay.
uh, fortunately, the boss has that well under control in our household. All right, Matt, for me, I'm going to go similarly, but I'm going to expand it. Hampton Sydney certainly was, had the big win. But I want to talk about the ODAC as a whole, right? I think the ODAC really won the week. Uh, for me, we've talked about how great of a league it is, but maybe we have to think about it even deeper than we did before, right? So Hampton Sydney goes on the road, beats John Carroll, but Matt, within the conference, Shenandoah got a win over
Yeah.
Guilford. Um, so they stay undefeated. With that win, you can't really at this point look at the undefeated record and say, well, who have you played? Because now they've played Guilford, they've beaten Guilford. Just looking at updated rankings, they're now 44th in the Massey ratings and 44th in the D3 Datacast computer rankings. So, top 50, maybe some top 20 voters start to defer to that undefeated record. That would give the ODAC five possibly rankable teams in the top 25. Just crazy. Now, I noticed Lynchburg fell out of the top 100 in the D3 Datacast computer rankings, but inside Massey, the Massey ratings still have nine teams within the top
Yeah.
100. Matt, we talk about the depth of the UAA. That's all. That's only an 8-team league, so they can't get nine teams in the top 100. The ODAC has that currently.
Yeah, I think the ODAC right now is every bit as good as the UAA, at least when you talk 1 through 8 or top 1 through 9. UAA 8-team leagues, so they don't have those teams at the bottom, but the ODAC has, I think, every bit as quality kind of at that top 2/3 of the league. I think you're right about that.
All right, so Matt, there's a few games that we wanted to get into just kind of quickly before we get into our topic of the week, where we are going to eat some crow, some humble pie, and talk about 10 things we were wrong about, Matt. But just real quickly, Wednesday, we got a really big matchup between unbeatens and Elmhurst and Shrine, number 15 in all the land and number 19 in the current top 25. Matt, it was Elmhurst overcoming a halftime deficit to get an
Yeah.
81-74 win. Illinois Wesleyan already found this out. Now Trine finds this out. Do not mess with second half
Yeah.
Elmhurst.
Yeah, really great. I think that's 51 points in this game in the second half. A great offensive output there in the second half. Trine's really good on defense as well. Now they were missing Emmanuel Menangolo, who has a lot to say on defense, but still, that's the rest of the team is good defensively as well. To give 51 points in the half to Elmhurst, I think that says a lot about what Elmhurst can do offensively. So really good result for the Blue Jays. I think that they were looking for a big non-conference win, and this is one. They definitely belong in the in the national conversation. And to me, they look like the top of the CCIW right now.
Yeah, they do, but it'll still be interesting to see how that CCIW race unfolds. They've have gotten out to the start here, but Matt, that was largely by beating other contenders at home. So what's keeping me a little bit reserved on Elmhurst as it
Yeah.
relates to them being the CCIW favorite. While I think they are the favorite, I just, it's tough to win on the road. They defended home court. Let's see what happens as they get into road games in the CCIW. Um, but Matt, elsewhere, number 22, Trinity took down Washington and Lee. One of those
Yeah.
ODAC teams.
Yep.
Trinity looks really good, and they may be the best team in Texas right now.
Yeah, I think that's almost certainly the case that they're the best team in Texas. They look great, top 25 worthy for sure. Could be looking at hosting like a Texas pod later on in this, come March.
And another one, Matt, we'll get to this one in our picks. Mount Union seems to have righted the ship. We've talked about some of the uneven results maybe they've had so far, but they get an 11-point win over St. John's
Yeah.
down in Florida, 76-65.
Yeah, really, really good win for Mount Union. Nice to see them rolling. I think that they haven't, to me, they haven't performed to my expectations early in the season, and a result like this gets them back in that direction. And then Zach, I think one more I was keeping an eye on was Widener and Carthage, same day, Wednesday. Widener was out to a really big lead. Carthage came all the way back, but it was Widener in the end taking an 81-78 win at home. Two teams definitely trying to be in the mix. Widener in the rankings there. Carthage trying to be players in the CCIW. We know that's usually a strong league. So that was a good game. It was a little bit uneven game because Widener jumped out early, then Carthage came back late, but it ended up being a 3-point margin, which was maybe kind of what we expected.
Yeah. The only problem being that's probably not all we need to say about Carthage from this past week, Matt. We talked about Elmhurst as a CCIW contender. Carthage, I think, probably still has to be thought of as a CCIW contender, but they followed up that loss to Widener, which, while certainly understandable, they followed that up with a loss to Ursinus, who was coming
Yeah.
off a 32-point loss to Ohio Northern. So not a great week for Carthage. I think their standing as a top 25 team
Yeah.
is toast for now. Um, and we'll see what happens as they get back into CCIW play.
Yep. Yeah, they have a lot of work to do, I think, ahead of them.
All right, Matt. So there's no poll. I don't think you're not going to be filling out another ballot until after the new year. But I
Correct.
did
Yeah.
want to ask if there's just anything that, as a top 25 voter, that you're thinking about looking for, even though you're not having to put together a ballot this week.
I think for me at this point, we talked about some of the results already this week. For me, looking at those kind of post Christmas, those pre New Year's games, we have the D3Hoops.com Classic in Vegas in particular. So looking ahead to some of those games, I think there's a couple of teams that I'm voting for pretty high that I have not really, in my mind, seen play another kind of top opponent. So I think we'll maybe talk about some of those games later on, but that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. I'm kind of glad maybe that there's not a poll this week because some of those teams I wouldn't know where to place. I'd maybe knock them down just because I'm not as confident in them as I am against someone who I've seen play some maybe top 25 caliber teams. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to as a voter before my January 1 poll is seeing a few more of these tournaments and getting another look at some of these kind of cross-regional, cross-country matchups that we have.
All right, sounds good, Matt. So as we mentioned, we wanted to run through some things that, well, maybe we thought earlier in the year or coming into the year that just haven't come true, that we were wrong about. And we want to
Yeah,
be honest with our audience, Matt. We're not always correct. I know that
yeah.
is hard to believe. Uh, we try to have good opinions and analysis, but as it turns out, sometimes those are incorrect.
Yeah,
So we have 10 things.
I don't think anyone's
Yes, we
shocked
have
to hear that we're occasionally wrong,
no, probably not. Least of all our families. However, Matt, we came up with a list. It could have been much longer than this, but we came up with a list of 10 things that we were wrong about, uh, presented in not really any particular order. So let's just say that off the bat. But Matt, the 10 things that we came up with that we were wrong about. Let's start off with number one is that, this season, let's just run it back with last year's Final Four teams at the top of the rankings. I think when we were part of the QCast top 25 panel coming into the year, I think three of these four teams were listed in that segment we were talking about,
yeah,
surefire top 10 teams or top 10 for that preseason poll, with Swarthmore being the one exception, although they were
yeah,
still going to be a consensus top 25 team. So here we go, Matt. We see here Christopher Newport was the preseason number one. Wisconsin Whitewater, the preseason number 2, Mount Union, the preseason number 5, Swarthmore, the preseason number 11. So this wasn't just our opinion, right? It was
Yeah.
the opinion of the collective top 25 poll that, hey, last year's Final Four teams were going to be, you can say all 4 of them, contenders to get back this year. But I think at this point in the season, we have to take a different opinion.
Yeah, I think they've all taken a step back to varying degrees. Christopher Newport, we've seen a few early season losses. They had some injuries. Now, Zach, we're maybe hearing news that they also are dealing with a suspension to Trey Barber. So we'll have to hear more information about that as well, what the situation is there. But I've knocked Christopher Newport down to 25 in my poll. UW Whitewater, I had up toward the top of my poll preseason. Now I'm voting them more in the middle of the poll. I think they're the one team that's maybe still hanging on to some hopes of jumping right back up into that mix. Mountain Union, we talk about some of their struggles. They lost to Wilmington. They've had some just other like overtime games against teams that aren't really in the kind of top 100 discussion. I have them unranked, although the rest of the voting body is kind of more mid tier on Mount Union. And I think we talked even last week about Swarthmore, how they have 3 losses by 20 or more points already this season. They have not looked top 25 caliber. As of the last poll, they did hang on to that number 25 spot. I'm guessing that's going to be gone at this point. I did not rank them. I did not rank Mount Union in my last poll. So yeah, these teams are. We thought that they were returning good cores, and we know every team has to replace something, but these teams all had promising cores, or at least promising enough players returning that we thought that they could continue to build back around them, and they would be right back in the mix. Certainly, top 25 discussion, maybe they will find themselves in the mix, but they have not separated themselves from any number of other good programs that have been on the rise, and in fact, I think have proven themselves to be behind a number of those programs. So, not really in the mix anymore to be really at the top of the poll at this point. There's still work to do, right? So none of this is definitive, but I think these teams have all taken a backseat to other contenders.
Right. I think those cores that we talked about returning, do exist. The potential is there
Mm-hmm.
for these teams to, uh, get back to that level we saw from them at the end of last season. And, we're not talking about disaster seasons by any means here. It's just that,
Yeah.
like you said, these teams are just sort of in a mix with a bunch of other teams rather than, being that lead pack that a bunch of other teams are trying to catch.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, number 2 on our list here, Matt. We thought maybe this year the NESCAC would be down, and
Yeah.
maybe the order of teams looks a little bit different, or maybe not exactly how we expected. But when you stack up how the NESCAC as a whole has performed compared to other conferences, here we can see on the screen here from the D3 Datacast computer ratings that the NESCAC ranks out as the number 4 team in Division III basketball. So we're still talking about a top 5 league here. Um, I don't think that you can fairly say the NESCAC is down.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they're right back in the top 4 or 5, like we kind of expected. In fact, they're rating right above the WIAC, who's maybe having a little bit of an atypical WIAC year. But these are all good leagues. These are all strong leagues, the leagues that we expect to be in the mix at the top. And the NESCAC is still one of them. And I think in the preseason, in the early season, when we were looking at rosters of teams, it looked like the NESCAC of kind of these more powery conferences. Just in general, the teams toward the top had to replace more than the average amount. If you're thinking like points and rebound totals, I think like Tufts, a team who's great, like maybe one of the top 3 or 5 teams in the country right now. They in my little quick like jotting down, figuring some numbers, they had to replace like 50% of their minutes and points types production from last year, and they found a way to do that, and they found a way to do that with a roster that's still, I think, fairly young. I think they only have a couple of seniors maybe on that team, so they look good. Trinity, Connecticut has really come on strong. Williams, I think, was maybe the one team that was more of a consensus favorite in the league, and they're kind of maybe like a solid third or so. Right now. So I think there's a number of strong teams. I think the league as a whole has not really taken a step back. Others like Wesleyan and Connecticut College are coming on strong as well. So I think there's a good core, a good group here that's going to make a very interesting conference race, and then a very interesting NESCAC tournament down the line. And we're going to be talking about more than 2 of these teams in the NCAA tournament at the end of the year. So NESCAC, end of the day, right back where we thought they would be.
And then a conference that maybe is not where we thought they would be, Matt. Moving on to number 3 on our list here. Things that we were wrong about. The CCIW is a top 5 league, right? You can
Yeah.
generally count on the CCIW year in and year out to be a top 5 league. And whether you're looking at the D3 Datacast computer ratings or the Massey ratings, the CCIW does not currently rank as a top 5 league.
No, and usually I think top 5 is even a little bit like conservative. Very often you can
Right.
say they're a top 3 or 4 league very easily. Not this year. I think there's a combination of maybe some other leagues like the ODAC really pushing into that top tier, but also the CCIW has really just taken a step back. They're not the teams. There's not the strength at the top that we're used to seeing here in the efficiency ratings. You can see on the blue and gray boxes, they're the number 10 league. It's like Mac Commonwealth, NJAC, American Rivers, NUMAC, and then the CCIW. Like these are the teams. Massey's a little bit higher on them at the number 7 rating, but still right there around the American Rivers and Mac Commonwealth. So good leagues, still a good league overall. It's just not in the same tier. It's not tier 1 league this year. It's a tier 2 league in my mind. And that's just not what we're used to seeing for the CCIW. We're used to seeing like not are they going to get a pool C bid, but how many pool C bids are they going to get this year? Question of there's definitely a world in which the CCIW does not get an at-large bid into the NCAA tournament. They still could, but there's definitely like reasonable paths out there for them to get a pool A only, and that's it.
And to bring it down a level, to help explain how we get to this point, Matt, I went back looking through the Massey archives, and you go back to since Carroll rejoined the league, and the CCIW has always had 6 or 7 teams inside the Massey top 100. Right now, that's just 3.
Yeah.
Right. So you're talking about 6 or 7 every year. They're only half of that or worse. So it's just not not the depth that we're used to
No.
seeing, certainly
Yeah.
from the CCIW, and then also not like that super national contender,
Yep.
Final Four threat at the top. We'll see. Maybe someone emerges. Maybe Elmhurst is that.
Yeah.
But for what it looks like right now, just we're talking about just a really good league,
Yeah.
right?
I
Not
mean,
an elite league, a surefire top 5 league.
sort of even leave aside like a Final Four or Elite Eight type contender. I think to me is Elmhurst the only like top 25 rankable team really in consideration right now. I think that's probably the case. So yeah, definitely not the CCIW we're used to seeing.
All right, on to number 4 on our list, Matt. We thought that the UAA will not only show its usual depth, but really show that true national power, national contender at the top as well.
Yeah, this one to me is a little bit of a mixed result. I think it's largely not proving out to be exactly as we thought, right? So last year we talked about how the UAA was so deep, and it still is, but the teams were more like middle to back half of the top 25. This year was going to be the year that Case and NYU and WashU and Emory, they're all making those cases to be in the top 10, maybe toward the top 5 in the country. To me, that has not really proven out to be the case right now. I think there's still a lot of good teams, but there's still a lot of teams maybe in that mid-tier to back end of the top 25. Maybe Emory is pushing that boundary a little bit, but I think I'll use I statements here. I expected for there to be a couple, 2, 3 teams to be right there in that mix of kind of like pushing that tier 1 teams like for top 5 consideration. Right now, I don't see that. I only see maybe Emory. I think Case still has time to make a case. Teams like WashU, NYU can still, they're sitting at like 0 and 1 loss kind of teams. They still have opportunities to make that case, but I haven't really seen that play out so much.
All right, Matt, and this kind of segues into our next thing that we are wrong about here, and that we thought that maybe there would be some transfers that really vault some teams into that surefire top 5 status, that like elite tier that everyone's trying to chase. And as it relates to the UAA, in particular, Case Western Reserve, NYU kind of had that transfer buzz heading into the season. Claremont Mudd Scripps as well. But as we discussed with the UAA here, that really hasn't taken place. We haven't seen those transfers propelling these teams to like you have to have them in your top 5.
Right. Yeah, and I think in this sense, I think some of the transfers we're talking about here, right? There was like D2 and D1 type transfers. These 3 teams on the screen, Case, NYU, Claremont Mudd Scripps, we all heard about like D1 guys joining the fray. That there was going to be additional power added to these teams. All these were strong teams last year. Like, are these all going to be pushing for the Final Four? Are they going to be in the top five? Largely no. Again, maybe Case and NYU can still make those push. And one team here is not like the other. Claremont Mudscripts has not had a good start to the season at all. Remember in our hot takes and opinions episode, we had like questions, comments about should Claremont Mudscripts be considered as a Final Four contender? And at the time, we thought that was reasonable, right? We didn't reject that out of hand. They're not that right now. I think Case and NYU are still good, but they're not that top tier type of team. I think other teams that have gotten a lot of transfers, I'll think of a team like Widener, who has had maybe like 2 or 3 or 4 of their top guys, kind of like seniors, be transferring into their program from other D3 programs the last couple of years. So these are players that have played a lot at the D3 level, at a high level, now coming all to Widener, and they're kind of rising up the charts. Maybe not in that elite status. Maybe they're getting up more toward like a Case or an NYU right now. But I don't think what we've seen most years is for a lot of these like D1 guys that didn't really play very much at D1 and D2, coming down and making such a huge impact that they're really moving the needle all that much at the D3 level. They're just kind of coming in and like fitting in. They're not like bumping those teams up a tier. So I think that's one thing when we talked about transfers, we're going to have to remember when we talk about transfers next year, that's not just going to automatically vault a team, or at least we haven't seen that yet at this point this season.
Yep. Not that it couldn't happen in the future, but I think it makes sense to be a little bit more reserved about expectations for what that means. All right, Matt, sixth on our list here, closer to home. I think that we were both kind of resigned to the fact that the MIAA is just a one bid league, and um, you know we're happy to see that right now it looks like it's probably a surefire two bid league, and with looking at projected winning percentage, strength of schedule numbers. Even Hope as a third team is kind of bubblish, maybe if
Yeah.
you're looking at projected resumes. And then, depending on how they perform, if they can outperform that projection a little bit, can definitely be a bubble team as we get there to bring the potential number of bids to 3 when you include the automatic bid.
Yeah, last year was a little bit of a frustrating year to follow as fans of MIAA top teams, specifically Calvin and Shrine, when they're putting up 22 win seasons each, and then neither of them being in the mix at the end of the year for Pool C consideration. I think last year Calvin's final strength of schedule was around 507, Shrine's was 492. There's always more you can do out of conference, right? That's always the step, is can you schedule even stronger? But last year, the bottom half of the league just did not win enough games out of conference. So when it came time for conference play, it was just continuing to drag down strength of schedule. This year's been completely different. Teams like Alma, Kalamazoo, Albion, and to some degree Olivet have won some games and are now getting their minimum baseline strength of schedule up. So the rest of the league, when we were coming into conference play, we're looking at projected strength of schedule numbers. We see more Pool C viable numbers, like Trine at 551. That's going to be a very solid, a very good strength of schedule. Calvin projecting out, kind of heading into the conference tournament play at 533, or Hope at 539. These are our SOS numbers that will just keep you in the conversation, very, very much be in there with your winning percentage. What did you do? You're very selectable. So right now, with the resumes we see, I think we're seeing the MIAA almost certainly being a multi-bid league, whether that's 2 or 3. I think 3 is probably not super likely unless something kind of crazy goes on. That'd be like maybe Hope winning the Pool A again, and Calvin and Trine winning enough conference games to still be in the mix. That could possibly happen, but more likely than not, a 2-bid league, which is interesting. We just talked about the CCIW maybe only being a 1-bid league, and the MIAA almost certainly being a 2-bid league. That's just a difference for the year, and that's something we were not expecting as fans of MIAA teams coming into the season.
As we sit here today, we have 6 of the 8 teams with a winning percentage of 500 or better. And like you said, that's key to developing that strength of schedule. You really need your conference mates to be winning as many games as possible. And so Matt, right now, I think the question's not so much, is it only a 1-bid league, but it's like, which one of these teams is going to be hosting a pod?
Could
And,
be. Yeah.
And then is it one more team, or is it 2 more teams that join the party there,
Yeah.
so to speak?
Yeah. Yeah, not inconceivable. You could be talking about two hosts from the MIAA. Likely only one if there is the chance. But again, what a difference a year makes just in the rest of your league winning games and boosting that strength of schedule out of conference.
We won't be too greedy right now, Matt. We'll just talk about bids as opposed to multi-host
Yeah, yeah.
conference.
Let's get in first.
Yeah. All right. Next on our list here, Matt. We thought maybe this would be the year finally that we'd see a little bit of tailing off from Randolph-Macon, or at least the Randolph-Macon we've come to expect
Yeah.
over the last few seasons. Now, from a record standpoint, 7-3, you might think, yeah, it happened. But if you look at some computer ratings, here we on the screen we have the national rankings for the current computer ratings on d3datacast.com, and look at there, Randolph-Macon ranked by the computer as the number 3 team in the country.
Yeah, it's their record causes some concern, but then you look at who they've played and their strength of schedule. The computers all think they've played one of the most difficult schedules in the country. We've talked about some of their low point totals they've put up. I was looking at d3datacast.com earlier today, and they've played against the number one opposing defenses of any teams. They're playing against strong defenses. They're still 7-3. They're playing against one of the toughest schedules. So the computer says, hey, they're right here in the mix. If anyone else played against the schedule, they wouldn't even be 7-3 is kind of what the computers are saying. They'd be worse than that. Randolph-Macon, there's no Buzz Anthony this year. There's no Miles Mallory this year. There's no Josh Talbert, guys that we've seen, from that national championship team 2 years ago and the strong team last year. Some of those guys are kind of still there. There's program momentum, but it's kind of a new set of guys that are coming in. And maybe they're not the class of the ODAC because of how strong that league is, but I think they're going to be right there in the mix nationally. I think that they have a very good chance to be in the tournament discussion. And who knows, come March, maybe Randolph-Macon makes more waves, and we're talking about them as a second weekend team or beyond once again.
Amazing to see. If we talk about, there's great teams and there's great programs. Pretty
Yeah.
obvious. I don't think there was any doubt already, but Randolph-Macon is a great program,
Yep.
right? They're just reloading and just doing what they do.
Yep.
All right, Matt. Another thing we thought coming into the season was that the Centennial would be a 2-team race, and that turns out to very much not be the case right now.
Right. It's just going to be Johns Hopkins and Swarthmore, right? Just as it's been the last
Right.
several years. These two teams, they're going to split in the regular season, and come Centennial Conference Championship game, one of them is going to be the Pool A, the other one's going to be a Pool C, and then that's the whole Centennial conversation. Not so fast, my friend, I think is what you say here. Right now, there's probably not a whole lot of separation between teams like Johns Hopkins, like Franklin and Marshall, like Gettysburg, and Swarthmore is kind of currently fourth in that list by the efficiency ratings that you can find at d3datacast.com. I think that this is going to be a very interesting race. This is going to be the most compelling Centennial Conference race that we've had in a while. Now, it's probably because Swarthmore and Johns Hopkins have taken a step back from those nationally elite teams we've seen the last couple of years. There's still some questions about them. But Franklin and Marshall, Gettysburg, very good. They're the types of teams that can reach out and beat someone that's kind of on that top 25 mix. So it's a very compelling race. It makes it a more interesting race for us kind of national followers of Division III basketball, that it's not just going to be two teams at the top and then a whole rest of the league fighting for scraps.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just in what's transpired already, I mean, Gettysburg has a win over Johns Hopkins, right? So it's
Yeah,
that's a result that, it's already happened. And like you said, so part of this is set up because Johns Hopkins and Swarthmore have come back to the pack a little bit. Those were two preseason top 25 teams that have not performed like top 25 teams so far this season. Um, but you can't hold that against Franklin, Marshall, Gettysburg, especially, Gettysburg's got the head-to-head win. It should be a very compelling race. We talked, and then even go, there's a little bit of a gap there by the computer rankings, but Ursinus, we talked about beating Carthage.
Carthage. Yeah.
Muhlenberg knocked off, I believe it was Hopkins last season, right? So I mean, there's even some more teams beyond that top 4 that create a bit of a danger zone for the likes of Hopkins and Swarthmore as they try to maybe reestablish themselves as the two clear favorites.
Yeah, this will be an interesting conference season to watch, I think.
All right, Matt, another conference we need to talk about that I don't think we were not right about. I will say we were not right about. We thought the ASC would be in the middle of the national picture, Matt. Mary Hardin-Baylor was the preseason number 15 team. East Texas Baptist was the preseason number 20, and neither team is even on a top 25 radar at
No.
this point. And the ASC uh, just really there's not like there's been another team that's really emerged as a top 25 contender to replace these teams. So the
No.
ASC is really kind of off the national picture for the at least for the time being.
Yeah, when you're looking at the computer efficiency rating line, Mary Hardin-Baylor, the number 146 team in the country. East Texas Baptist, number 215. The top two right now by my computer is UT Dallas at number 90 and Hardin-Simmons at number 92. So yeah, not really any nationally elite teams. This was a conference that we thought would have almost certainly a Pool C bid coming into the season. I remember I had East Texas Baptist just off of my top 25 ballot, and on our first episode, that was one thing you kind of not questioned me on, but asked about what was my thought process there, because they were almost a consensus by the known. We had some known and some unknown ballots before the preseason. They were almost consensus by some of the known ballots, and I had them really close. I tried to put them on my top 25, and they have not gotten any really good results this year. So ASC it's not been what we expected. We know that conference is going through some turnover as far as membership, and they're going to be in a membership crisis. But right now, that the conference is in a basketball crisis because there are not very many good teams in that league right now.
Matt, you still have to think that the potential exists for whoever to emerge out of that conference. And it may, like you said, the situation we're in now, it's probably only going to be whoever wins the league's bid to the tournament. But you wonder if someone gets right and can cause some trouble, um, down the line. I don't know. It's just that at what point do you completely let go of any
Yeah.
expectations you had coming into the season and just deal with what we actually have in front of us?
Yeah. Well, and part of the reason we were high on some of these teams, I'll say Mary Hardin-Baylor and ETBU in particular, was we know there's some great individual players, some great talent on the team, and we thought
Yep.
that it would kind of gel around them, and I just don't really see that having been the case yet. So again, maybe it's a case of someone figuring it out down the stretch, but I haven't seen it yet at this point.
All right, Matt, one more thing that we're going to talk about that we were wrong about, and that is I think we both had an expectation coming into the season that Maryville would be able to coast to a CCS title. Um, Now I picked them very highly when we did our way too early conference champions draft. I was very confident in their ability to win the title, and I'm guessing you also had them
Yeah.
ranked very highly. It sounded like Bob Quillman did as well. He was disappointed that I made that pick. He thought he would be able to snag them. Um, Now I'm still feeling good. I'm all Team Maryville all the way here. But it looks like it's not going to be an easy path to the title necessarily. When we look at the national rankings here, based on the D3 Datacast computer, Maryville currently ranks as the number 69 team. And not far behind them, Matt, is Piedmont, a team that we've talked about a little bit, right? We weren't sure what to make of them in the early season. It was, I believe, an exhibition with D1 Coastal Carolina. They led, I believe, late in the game, pushed them. They had a close game against Emory, and it's like, what's going on with Piedmont? Well, as it turns out, Piedmont is pretty good.
Yeah.
Currently a top 100 team by the D3 Datacast computer. And another team not too far behind there, Matt, is Belhaven, who I have it on good authority will mount a challenge to Maryville. So when you look at those two teams, kind of nipping at the heels, at least in terms of the computer rankings here, it doesn't look like Maryville will be able to coast to a CCS title.
Yeah, to me, like you can see on the screen there, they might still be the favorite. They probably still are the favorite, but probably not by a large enough that Piedmont or Belhaven could be taken lightly. Those are gonna be challenging games for Maryville. I think any of those three teams, I think at the end of the day, if they claimed the CCS regular season crown, we would not be surprised. And yeah, you're right. We all wanted Maryville in the first round of that little conference champions draft that we had back in October. It doesn't look like it's going to be just the big one and the little six there in the CCS. So yeah, good surprise from Piedmont this year. I think they maybe added some D3 talent in the offseason I think it was kind of like fifth year guys joining the fray there in Piedmont, and putting them right in the middle of a top 100 race here. So those will be good games, one to watch for sure. Now the CCS doesn't have a Pool A, so their only access to the tournament will be Pool C, but it'll be still a very interesting conference battle as well.
So there you have it, Matt. Those are 10 things that we were wrong about. We'd love to hear from some viewers. What were you wrong about? What were some things maybe you thought coming into the season or in the early part of the season that as we sit here, towards the end of December, you're willing to admit that you were wrong about? Let us know. You can leave a comment here on YouTube, find us on social media, Facebook or Twitter/X, whatever you want to call it these days, at D3 Datacast. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, let's move into the picks segment. Quick review what happened last week, Matt. Roanoke was a 3.5-point favorite over Eastern in a game played at Catholic, and Roanoke was able to cover as 79-71 winners. We both pick up the point there. Matt, we were split on Trine and Elmhurst. Elmhurst was a 3.5-point favorite at home, and in a game we talked about, they were 81-74 winners. So I get the advantage on you. We both went with Mount Union +2 on a neutral court against St. John's. Mount Union does indeed win outright, 76-65. And a game played in Hawaii between Whitworth and Dubuque. Dubuque was a 9-point favorite. Matt, we both thought that was too much, and we were looking good at halftime. Whitworth was ahead by 8 at the half, but it's Dubuque who storms back, has a great second half, and not only wins the game, but covers the 9-point spread, 13-point winners, a 71-58 score there. And the D3 Datacast game of the week. Matt, we've talked about it already. Hampton-Sydney was actually a half-point favorite at John Carroll. You liked the Tigers. I was rolling with the home team Blue Streaks. And of course, you were correct by a mile, 85-67. Tally it all up, Matt. We took different paths to 3-2 records. I am now 21-13-1, whereas you improved to 19-15-1. Which brings us to week 8.
All right, I'll run down the list here. Game 1, Mary Washington. They are 5-point underdogs at Emory. Game number 2, UW-Platteville, a 3.5-point underdogs versus Calvin. This is a game being played at Trine. WPI is 6-point favorites versus Gettysburg. I believe that is on a neutral court. Tufts is a half-point underdog at Cal Lutheran. And our D3 Datacast game of the week out in Las Vegas, Oswego State, 6-point favorites versus Case Western Reserve at the D3Hoops.com Classic. So let's go one by one, Zach. Mary Washington +5 at Emory.
Yeah, let's see. I'm going to go Mary Washington on this one. I think they'll keep it within 5. This is just a play for the points here for me.
Okay. Yeah, for me, the points are not enough. I'm going to take Emory. I believe this is at Emory, right? So I think more than 5 at home is going to be comfortable for Emory. Platteville +3.5 versus Calvin.
Okay, Matt, I'm going to go with Calvin in this one. I'm going to go total confidence on this one. I'm not going to go for the emotional hedge. We've seen that it appears Logan Pearson for Platteville is in a boot. He didn't play in their last game at North Central, so don't know the situation, but that just gives extra confidence here, Matt, to lay the 3.5 with our Calvin Knights.
Yeah, I thought about that as well. I don't know if Pearson is going to be available for this game or not. We still have, as we record, we still have like a week until this game is being played. But either way, I think 3.5 for me on a neutral court, a court that Calvin has experience playing on. I'm going to take the Knights to cover that against Platteville, but it should be a great game. WPI -6 versus Gettysburg.
Matt, I'm going to make this my don't be afraid to lay a bigger number game of the week and go with WPI.
Okay, Zach, I think I'm going to disagree with you on this one. I'm going to go with Gettysburg. I know 6 points is that's a big number, so I don't think that Gettysburg's going to have a challenge to stay within that. We talked about them being in that mix in the Centennial Conference. I know WPI is good, kind of top 25 type good, but I think Gettysburg is going to be able to hang with them and keep it within that 6. Tufts looks like they're out in California. Zach, who do you pick?
Yeah, just about a pick 'em line here, Matt, with just a half point to play with. Now, maybe I'm not thinking about this game correctly, but I don't expect Tufts to go undefeated this season. And so when I look at their schedule and I look at potential games that they could drop, this one jumps out at me. Tufts has had they'll have had about a 3 week break, I believe, between games when they finally get to this one. Cal Lu, it doesn't appear that they have any big breaks. They just had a couple games recently against Illinois Wesleyan and Kalamazoo. They're at home. They played well, won
Yeah.
both of those games. I think that consistency will aid them. Tufts might be shaking off some rust. So I look at this as a potential game Tufts could lose. I think Kalu is a team that people should be talking about more. And so I'm going to go with Kingsman.
Very, very interesting there. Interesting play. I'm going to maybe take the more conventional route and take Tufts, although I understand a lot of what you said. I think it is tough to go East Coast to West Coast to play these games. But to me, getting like plus half a point for Tufts, I think Tufts is great. I think Tufts is one of the best teams in the country, and I understand what you're saying about Cal Lu, and they're looking like an emergent team in the SCIAC here. But to me, this line's just too close. I might bet Cal Lu to cover like a 5 or 6 point line, but I think basically I pick him here. I'm going to take Tufts. All right, game of the week to you, Zachary.
Looking forward to this one, Matt, because I feel like
Yeah.
it's a measuring stick game for both teams that we really haven't had for either one yet this season. Um, the 6 points I think is a little bit too big, and I already made my don't be afraid to lay a bigger number pick, so I'm going to go with Case Western Reserve on this one.
Okay. Another one we're going to disagree on. I'm going to go with Oswego State. I'm hanging in there with one of my preseason kind of top 3 picks. Oswego State, I think that they're good. I want to see them prove it. Case Western Reserve is a team I've watched a couple of times, and we looked at their top 5 offensive and defensive numbers. They're kind of elite on offense, but not that great on defense. I'm wondering if Oswego State is going to take advantage of that defense and put up a lot of points in this game. So out in Vegas on the neutral court, Oswego to cover the 6 is my pick. So there you have it.
We only agree on one game,
All right, so I'm going to
and
be able
it's
to make up
Kelvin.
some ground. Yeah.
All right, Matt, let's get into the mailbag. We have a few things to address here, starting with this one from D3 Hoops commenter. Sent it in to this one came in on Twitter. We're getting into the time of year, Matt, where we're going to be talking a lot about how the bubble is taking shape, and this one's kind of getting in. Maybe it's a little early, but we can start talking about it. Farmingdale State were to run the table except for the title game, they'd have a winning percentage of 929, but since their projected SOS is so low, would they automatically be out of contention for a Pool C?
I think the answer is yes. I'm currently projecting their SOS to be about 466 heading into the Skyline tournament. Could raise a little bit through the Skyline tournament, but not that much. I think that's just not going to get them close to the conversation. I think Farmingdale State is Pool A or bust. They do have a nice win over Wesleyan, I think it was. But other than that, I don't really see ranked win opportunities on their schedule. So to have a low SOS, to have maybe just one regionally ranked win, I think it doesn't matter if you're 929, you're not going to be in the mix there. So they're going to want to win the Pool A.
Yeah, especially with what we saw last year, you always ask the question like how low is too low for winning percentage? How low is too low for strength of schedule? I feel like we got a lot more information on that, at least in terms of how the committee last year viewed that is um I don't want to say there isn't a how low is too low for winning percentage, but we saw some low winning percentages get boosted up because they had a very high
If
strength of schedule number. So in the reverse case, where you have a very high winning percentage but a low strength of schedule, 466 from what we saw last year is just not gonna do it. But it'll be interesting to see how they get treated there, and as we start to see some regional rankings in Region 3, because there may be some cases where if they are around like a 900 winning percentage, how does that get treated with, like, I'm just looking right now at like projected numbers that we have for Region 3 here on d3datacast.com. So like for instance, a Clarkson who has maybe a 520 strength of schedule, but a projected winning percentage of like 647. So that'll give us some indication about their viability just based on how they get slotted
Yeah.
in Region 3.
I mean,
But I
Region 3
agree.
is
I
going to
mean,
have there's not going to be a lot of good
even if we were
teams.
talking, even if we were talking 496, if that first number is a 4, that is definitely problematic.
All right, next question.
Okay, next one. Matt comes from Drew Latrenta. This one, prediction: which region will have the most Pool C bids, and which region will have 0? And I feel like Region 3 is going to factor into this answer as well.
Yeah, I think there's going to be questionable teams ranked in Region 3 all season long. So Farmingdale could very easily get ranked like middle of that. I don't know, and just not be viable. So I
And
went
it not
through
mean anything.
in my head region by region. I think Region 1 gets at least 2. I think Region 2 does get at least 1. Region 3 could possibly not have a Pool C team. Depends on if Oswego State and Hobart win their conferences, the SUNYAC and the Liberty League, respectively. If they do, I don't see probably a Pool C out of Region 3. If either of those drop their games, they'll be pretty Pool C viable, I think. So maybe Region 3 is your 0. Region 4, I see getting 2 bids at least. Region 5, I see getting 1 bid at least. Region 6, I think I see 4 bids. Region 7, I think I see at least 3 Pool C bids. Region 8, probably 1. There's a chance for 0 there. Region 9, I think gets at least 1. And Region 10, I think, gets at least 1, although there's a path to 0 there as well. So I think the most likely to be shut out is Region 3. If the favorites win, I don't think that they're going to get a Pool C. Possibly 8 and 10, maybe 5. You could maybe squint and see Region 5 getting shut out as well, but probably those other regions get a Pool C team. The region with the most is almost certainly, to me, Region 6. The ODAC is probably getting 3 bids themselves. I think the Coast to Coast probably comes away with a Pool C there, and maybe Emory, depending on who wins the UAA Pool A. Emory could be a Pool C as well. They could be the Pool A. So even if you give them that's 4 out of Region 6, and I think at most someone else could tie them there if Emory gets the Pool A. If Emory doesn't win the UAA, that's 5. That's an easy 5, I think. So yeah, and all my tallied up, I think I tallied like 18 Pool Cs or so. So there's 4 bid thieves in there somewhere. So yeah, I think that's how I see it. Maybe Region 6 closely followed by Region 7, and then Region 3 getting shut out possibly.
Should say, Matt, a couple episodes ago we did the Pool C fantasy draft. So the list is out there. You can,
Yeah.
Drew, I know you saw it. Go back, check the list. And just, divide them up by region. There's your answer right there.
I didn't think about that by region, but well, some of those were maybe Pool A's that we thought might fall. So I don't know if we take like Hobart or Oswego State in that draft.
Oswego State, definitely not.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, one more here, Matt, from Rob Hudson left this comment on the previous episode on YouTube. Says Massey has a very clear SOS calculation. Your efficiency ratings have 5 SOS columns. Is there one of them that is comparable to Massey's? Matt, this is a good question, a chance to explain the treasure trove of information presented in all of the data presented on d3datacast.com.
Yeah. Do you want to take this one, or do you want me to do it?
Well, I could scroll down to the bottom of the page and read the brief explanation you have, but I don't know that is even complete for truly answering this question.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'll take this one. So yes, I have 5 lines that are labeled as SOS on the efficiency ratings on d3datacast.com, and I will go through each one. No, none of them are directly comparable to Massey. So as I understand it, Massey rating strength of schedule is the equivalent to a hypothetical team rating that would produce the same number of expected wins for any given team. So like if a team had 4 games remaining and the Massey percentages gave them like 3 expected wins, then that would be 0.75 wins per game. So that would be what rating against this team would yield 0.75 wins or 75% winning percentage. So that's Massey's SOS calculation. Mine isn't any of those necessarily. So I have the SOS win 50 column. So that is what is the rating of a team against which, or sorry, what is a rating of a team that would be expected to go 500 against this team's schedule? So if you're looking at at Calvin's schedule, kind of at what line would a team expect to win half of their games and expect to lose half their games. And I think for Calvin, that's about plus 10 in efficiency margin. So that's one way to do strength of schedule. And in a sense, that's like the median SOS, your opponent SOS. So like against half the teams, you'd be favored if you were at that rating, and against half the team, you'd be unfavored if you were at that rating. The next column, SOS opponent efficiency margin, EM, that is the average efficiency margin of all of your opponents. So that's a different way. That's just taking all the teams you've played to date. What is their average rating? And the difference between these first two is that you could have very disparate strength of schedule that have the same opponent rating. So if you play like 10 games against teams who are plus 15, a top 5 team might be expected to win both of those games. If you played a game against team that was plus 30 and then a game against team that was 0 average, then your average rating would still be plus 15, but you'd probably be expected to lose one of those games and to win one of those games. So it's just a different way to look at maybe what a strength of schedule is. Because when it comes down to it, there's no one way to say this is a team's strength of schedule. This is a team's strength of schedule given this method, right? The next two columns are just opponent offense and opponent defense in an average sense. So on average, what are the offenses and defenses a two teams have played? So if you want to dive in and say, hey, Randolph-Macon is putting up really low point totals, SOS opponent defense might give an indication of why. They've played some of the best defenses in the country. And then the fifth column, SOS future, that is the average efficiency margin rating of all of a team's games not yet played to date. So future strength of schedule, what does that look like? Have they played all of their tough games, or do they still have more to come? So those are all the 5. They give a little bit of a different indication of the teams that any given program has played or will play. And there's just a little bit of a different look. So no one is not maybe directly comparable to Massey. They're all using slightly different methods, but all methods that give you some view into a team's strength.
So while they may be different, maybe arrived at differently, based on your explanation, I would say probably the SOS opponent EM column would be most similar to probably the strength of schedule that you would find on Massey.
Yeah, I think they're both a little bit different though. So you'll still see some that are very different, and you'll see those the most in a team. Like if you've played, so like Emory right now has played Guilford, and then they've played a bunch of teams who are not really inside the top 100. A team like Calvin has not played any team as good as Guilford, but they've played a lot more teams that are kind of like 20, 30, 50, 60, where Emory hasn't played those games. So they're very close on the opponent efficiency margin strength of schedule, but they're quite different on the win 50 strength of schedule margin. Because to go 500 against Calvin's schedule, you'd have to be better than to go 500 against Emory's schedule. Massey's maybe like 2/3 towards the SOS win 50 mark, but his is still again a different method.
Just to repeat, I said SOS opponent EM, not win 50.
That's what you said, yes. But I don't know if I agree that that's more close to his.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. And thus ends the mailbag. I want my Christmas card back.
Okay.
All right. All right, Matt, we do have one thing to take care of here, and that is to thank our Patreon supporters. We have a new Great Job Team supporter, Matt, that we need to give our shout out. Thanks to Eric Mack for joining the crew and joining the team here as a Great Job Team supporter on Patreon. We couldn't do what we do without their support. We couldn't just hand out everything we hand out, Matt, on d3datacast.com without these fine people helping make it happen so that we can do it without ads and without paywalls. Check out patreon.com/d3datacast for more information on how you can consider supporting us and what we do as really we look to support the Division III basketball community.
Yeah, we hope you enjoyed the show. We hope you enjoyed the data on d3datacast.com, the regional rankings, the efficiency ratings, the score predictions for men's and women's basketball, everything. So use that. No ads on the site. Thank you so much to these supporters. Zach, good job, team, a great job, team, and a Merry Christmas, team.